Hey everyone, before we dive in, I wanted to share something exciting. You can now send us a text message directly from your favorite audio platform. Yes. So whether you've got a question, want to give us feedback, or just want to share your thoughts on the show, I'd love to hear from you. Look in the show notes at the very start and you will see the phrase, send us a text. Click that link, send us your message, and that's it. We can't wait to read them. Now, let's jump in with this episode.
Is it okay if they swing by your high school and meet with you? I was like, holy smokes. Like I've
Wow.
gone 2-year periods, like getting led on by Division I programs. Like, oh
Right.
yeah. No, like we're interested, but like we're interested only if the guy we actually want commits somewhere else.
Today on the show, former Navy Division I basketball player and naval officer Grant Vermeer is up next. Welcome back to the Fifth Quarter Podcast. I'm your host, Sandy Adams, and this is where we dive deep into the world of sports, talking with retired athletes, current athletes, and everyone that makes the sports world great. A quick reminder, if you're not already subscribed to the podcast, make a note, subscribe to the show wherever you listen or watch, and please leave a review on Apple if you get a chance. You can find all of our information at 5thquarterpodcast.com. Now, grab your iced tea or your coffee. Get ready to be motivated and inspired, because this is where the real stories are told. Now, let me introduce you to today's guest. He's a former D1 basketball player and a 2017 graduate of the United States Naval Academy, and he served 6 years as a naval officer. These days, he's a partner at the Vermeer Group, a residential real estate team that services California and Texas, specializing in assisting Navy personnel in their relocation to the West Coast. Now, he uses his day job to power his passion project, Academy Insider, a 501c3 organization that guides, serves, and supports midshipmen, future midshipmen, and their families. And if that's not enough, he's also a college basketball official trying to give back and serve the game. Welcome to the show, Grant Vermeer.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be on here. I'm a huge fan of the show. I watched Cam Kinley's episode. Cam's a great friend of mine, and it
Yes.
exposed me to this show. And I went back and listened to multiple episodes, and I'm a huge fan of everything that you're doing with this platform. And I think the transition is something that's funny. Is we mentioned that I'm in the military.
Mm-hmm.
There's the military transition out of the service. I feel like it's very similar in this realm to
Yes.
a athlete transitioning out of playing their sport full time. So I'm so excited to
Yes.
be on here with you today and have this conversation, because I think it's something that's really important, really cool. And I just think your platform's incredible. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much. It's something that, I've looked back because we just had our 50th episode. Cam's is number 53, if anybody wants to go out and rewatch that. When we had our 50th episode, I just really kind of look back at just the amazing conversations I've had with like everyday people. I'm not looking for Steph Curry or LeBron James. I'm looking for those everyday people that just happen to play sports. They just happen to do that on the side or the majority of their life. And it is very similar to the military and getting out. And as we talked in the before the show, I have a lot of friends who are in the military and were in the military, and just that transition, regardless of when it happens or whatever it happens, it's become such a part of your life, just like athletics, that it's hard to change that. And I always tell people that are out there that regardless of whether you play sports, this show can teach you about career pivots. It can teach you about identity. It can teach you about persevering and resilience.
Mm-hmm.
And outside of sports or the military, or anything like that, it's all about careers and finding that next passion. So let's start this conversation off diving really deep into it.
Mm-hmm.
I would think that many people out there listening may be thinking, well, he went to the Naval Academy, so his future was kind of a given, and the transition had to have been easy. He already knows what he's going to do after graduation, right?
Don't have much of
So
a choice.
don't have much of a choice, right? So now let's talk about that right there. Like for you, what was the most difficult aspect of transition from an athlete to a different career?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, again, growing up, sports is what we do. It's who we
Yes.
are. We spend so
Right.
much of our life dedicating ourselves to improving at that craft.
Right.
All of our friends are built around that. All of our family. As a kid, like I joke all the time growing up, like I never skied, I never snowboarded. Our families, we didn't go on vacation because we went to tournaments. Like we were playing games, right? Like I feel bad for my parents. Like my parents didn't get an opportunity to like enjoy life like normal kids because they're driving me around from gym to gym, and we're hopping from place to place. And again, it's just become such a massive part of your life, but we love it. It's our
Right.
passion, right? Like
Right.
you have to go from this idea that I'm going to spend 3 to 5 hours a day
Right.
dedicated to my passion to now having to fill that void. You're not
Right.
practicing anymore. You're not playing together. You're not working out together. You're not doing those things. And it's cold turkey, right? Like you
Right.
last game played, now you're out. Right? And
Right.
so making that transition from having your passion be the center of your life for so long to not having that be the case, now you need to find creative solutions. You need to be reflective and introspective. And, for me, the transition that kind of happened, and it's something I'm sure I'll speak on a ton in this episode, is that you need to transition from having your passion be the center of your life to having your purpose be the center of your
Right.
life. And so
Yes.
I think that's something that's really important. And for me, this idea of purpose is really special. This idea of, being really dedicated to service, to a higher
Right.
calling, to loving people, to being a help, to taking every experience that you've built as an athlete and all these incredible opportunities and now applying it and giving back and helping people in your life. Like that's the transition that you need to make to just like to fill that
Right.
void that inevitably is going to be there, because again, that passion that you've dedicated so much of your life to is going to be gone.
No, absolutely. And I've done a lot of career coaching and worked with a lot of mid-level professionals who were somehow laid off, especially when I was living in Houston. Oil and gas industry was going up and down. So I worked with a lot of engineers, and they were devastated when they lost their job. And it goes back to that they'd put all this passion into their job. And I'm like, you have to look at the greater purpose of what you are. They can't take away who you are, the essence of who you are, but you have to not put so much value on the the job title so much as what you get up and do every day, and just find a different vehicle to do that in.
Yeah.
Um so let's talk about that transition a little bit from
Mhm.
the Navy to civilian life.
Yep. It was difficult at first. I joke. I thought going through the Navy, I was a really disciplined person,
Right,
and
you would
then
have to be.
you have to be. That's the thing, is they
That's
make you
it.
be one.
That's right. That's right.
And then I got out and I entered the world of entrepreneurship, and I was self-employed, and that's a whole nother beast. When no one is telling you that you need
That's
to
right.
be at X place at Y time in Z uniform, well, like choosing that for yourself is
Right.
a whole nother battle. And
Right.
so, for me, that initial transition was difficult because I had tasted freedom for the first time in my life. You know what I mean? I was like, hey, I'm a normal person. Like, this
That's
is
right.
great. And so, to actually find the rhythm and the habits of
Right.
being disciplined in a form of true self-discipline, that was the most difficult transition for me, was being really productive with my time, being really efficient with my time, and establishing great habits that now no one was holding me to, but it
Right.
was on me to continue forward with those and making progress in each venture that I had. And so for me, that was kind of the most difficult part of the transition.
So let's talk a little bit about what was your role in the Navy. Like when you graduated. I already
Mhm.
know all this, but let's talk about what was your role and where were you stationed?
Yeah, so at the Naval Academy, I majored in cyber operations. It's a new major, basically think cybersecurity. And
Yes, it's
after
huge.
it is big, in especially in the military space, where we operate with a lot of networks and classification levels and things that are at an immense level of secrecy and importance of
Right.
privacy. It made cybersecurity even more important. And so from that aspect, again, I majored in cyber operations at the Naval Academy. I graduated it, and then I became an officer in what we call the Cryptologic Warfare community. And so if you just think again, Cryptologic seems like you're like, whoa, like is he selling cryptocurrency? Like what's
Well,
this
yeah.
crypto thing? What is it? Think cybersecurity officer. I was working in the
Okay.
field of general cybersecurity, and this term we'll use called signals intelligence. But basically, again, to put it in layman's terms, I was working at the NSA. It was a very like cybersecurity secret type job, and I
Right.
worked at the NSA, and it was a very cool opportunity, supporting national defense and being involved in that realm. So super fun. The actual Navy aspect of it, and this is where being in the military is, because if at the NSA and a lot of these, intelligence agencies, you have civilians and you have military members. But the
Right.
military members go and support the military mission, involved within the intelligence community. So I spent my time deploying on submarines. I did 4 submarine deployments during my time as a naval officer,
Wow.
and that was it was surely was something. It was something. It was you know I like my time in the sun. I like breathing fresh air, and so to go multiple months at a time without breathing fresh air, or feeling the sunlight on your skin, it's that is a true battle and a true test of resiliency for sure. But again an amazing opportunity and a really cool life experience to have.
So, did you have an option to be above water or below water?
Ye Kind of. So in
Okay.
the military, we have we call it this general triangle, right? And so you
Okay.
have and it comes to decision making, right? So
Right.
you have your preference, which is one end of the triangle. You have
Right.
you have your performance in the other end of the triangle. So if you have your
Okay.
preference in performance, you're a high performer and you select a preference. You again, hopefully
Right.
that gives you some more leeway to ask what you're asking for. But then
Sure.
the third most dense part of the triangle is what we call the needs of the Navy. And
Right.
if the needs of the Navy needs something more than anything
Yes.
else, like it's just going to be what you do. And so I was approached. We have this term called detailer. It's the person who assigns you your job in the military. When you get
Okay.
these things called orders, that you have a 3-year set of orders where you're going to X location, X base to do a certain job. And
Right.
so I had my detailer talking to me, and he was like, "Hey, we have this opportunity to go be a direct support officer for the submarine mission out of Fort Meade, Maryland. This is a great opportunity. If you finish these orders, you get to go to graduate school right away and get your master's degree for free. Like it's a cool thing." And I was like, all right. Yeah, sure. Like sounds great. Yeah, I didn't give it too much thought. I was just like, yeah, sure. I was, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed and excited to start my new career.
Sure.
And so I was like, yeah, let's do it. There in retrospect, there were plenty of opportunities to not go on submarines. So I kind of
Yes.
shot myself in the foot on that one. But again, I don't know that I would trade the opportunity for anything. It was really cool.
Well, I always like to say, regardless of our experiences, whether we like them, we don't want to change them, they made you who you are today.
Yep.
And, if you guys go back and listen to Cam's, he kind of talks about the same thing. His experiences, just like your experiences, have given you certain insights to
Mhm.
go forward into another path. So basically, you started the Naval Academy in 2013
Mhm.
and you got out of the Navy in 2023.
Yeah.
10 years
10
of
years.
your life. So you led a very structured life. When you got out, like what was the hard, you talked a little bit about time management and those kind of things, but
Mhm.
like that first day you woke up that you were no longer required to go into whatever naval facility. How did you like what was that feeling like that day? Or did
Uh,
it take you a few days for it to like sink in?
it takes you a few days. It's funny. It's a whole gamut of emotion, to be honest with you, because there's a part of you that wakes up and you just like take a deep breath and smell the coffee, and you're like, I don't have to put on a uniform and
That's
go to
right.
work today. Like this is pretty great. But it can also, I remember it being really difficult because I think one of the really unique things about the military service, and especially being a military officer, right? You go
Right.
to a service academy, you go to West Point, you go to the Naval Academy, you go to Air Force, you graduate as an officer. You are a
Right.
part of the management and the leadership ranks within the armed services. And so it was weird because I went from being responsible for the leadership, care, morale, and lives of multiple
Yes.
sailors,
Right.
right? So you go from, again, having this massive amount of responsibility for other people, and now I'm left just by myself. It is just me. It's me,
Right.
myself, and I, and no one is worried about what I'm doing or where I'm at or what's happening. And so having that was difficult because it's very easy to associate, and you kind of mentioned earlier, to associate your identity or your purpose
Right.
with your job, right?
Right.
Like, this is what I do. And so when that's taken away from you, that can be really difficult. And so there was a transitory period where I needed to figure out, like, what is my purpose and how does that apply to my new life? And how can I take what I'm doing for my job in today's world and align it with my purpose? I think
Right.
the most important thing that we can do, in the true like definition of integrity, like, this is what I love about integrity, this idea of integrity. It's aligning your actions to your values, right? Like,
Right.
what are my values? What is most important to me? What is my purpose? And if I'm a man of integrity, I'm going to act in a way that supports those values, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, for me, it was something that was really important. It was established to me at my high school. So I went to this high school called Bellarmine College Prep. It's a Jesuit Catholic high school out in Northern California. And the ethos of the Jesuit order is being a man for others. In everything you do, you need to be of service. You need to love,
Right.
you need to emulate as best as you can the life of Jesus Christ. Like, how are you going to be a person who loves others, who takes care of others, and who helps others? Right. And so, that's something that I've held to my core. And for the first time, it was like really being tested of, like, how am I going to achieve that mission now in this new life, in this new career field, in this new world outside of the military? And so for me, that was the most difficult aspect in trying to navigate that and really make sure that my career and lifestyle and everything that I was doing was supporting that purpose.
And the other aspect of it is you go from, talking about identity, you go from this position of authority, pretty
Mm,
prestigious authority. You worked for the NSA, right? You worked in the NSA,
yeah,
to like a normal everyday person
yep.
with like, nothing associated with that. Did you already know what you were going to do once you got out of the Navy? All right, before we get into the next topic, I want to take a quick moment to tell you about something that can really help you level up your personal brand. I've created an exclusive new book called The Visionary Personal Brand Playbook. It's perfect for those of you who have big goals but aren't exactly sure how to make your brand stand out, or for that matter, where to even start. It's packed with actionable tips that you can start using right now, today. If you're interested, head over to my website at sandy-adams.com/playbook and grab your copy. Now back to the show.
I did. This is where I was definitely lucky. I knew what I was going to transition to, more or less. My mom had been a long time real estate agent. I had witnessed her life, and I knew that was a career field that I was going to enjoy doing. And so for me, I had this vision in my head, like, when I get out of the service, I'm going to join up and partner with my mom and build out this residential real estate business, being realtors in Texas and
Right.
California. And so at least from that perspective, I knew what I was going to do. But kind of like you're saying, taking away that, for lack of a better term, that status of being in the military. And if you're not careful, it can get to your head really
Yeah.
fast, right? Like, I
Sure.
think the stuff's so silly, but, like, I understand the rank and the importance of structure in the military. It's like, every day I drove on to base, I give my ID to the gate guard, and the gate guard would scan the back of the card, look at it, and see that I'm an officer, right? And because he
Right.
saw I'm an officer, he had to salute me,
That's
right?
right.
Every morning you get saluted by someone coming in. And if you aren't careful, that can go to your head really fast, right? Like that can go to this ego that like I'm a person of such importance that like this person who's checking gate guards has to salute me every day,
Sure.
right? And so that was a battle every day in and itself, because again, if you aren't careful, again, that can go out of control, and there are people who kind of get consumed by that power and responsibility. And again, for me, it was something that I was always really conscious about, and like, all right, how do I make this as personable as I can, and be like, hey man, like thank you so much, like I really appreciate it, like you're good, like don't worry about it. Not even don't worry about it, because again, you have to respect the
Yes.
you
You
have the
have to.
rank structure, but it was like
Right.
it's like a genuine like, hey, thank you, right? Like,
Right.
thank you. I appreciate it. And so, you just keep it going. And so for me in that transition out, right, like I felt like it had given me, you're saying a certain level of baseline responsibility and
Right.
status. And so like coming out of the military and recreating that on my own in this new world is like, how do I want my baseline brand to be? How do I want like my baseline when people see me again in the military uniform? It was with my rank quite literally
Right.
on my uniform, but it's like, how am I going to present myself now outside of the uniform in a way that hopefully generates that same level of respect, right? And
Sure.
so that was always something that I've been trying to deal with as well. And I think it just comes down to, and again, this is something, especially in uniform, it's like, how do you treat people? Right? Like every interaction, the way that initial interaction, the tone of your voice, the level of attention and genuine care you have to the person, that your general level of like positivity and friendliness and kindness, like that's going to be your first impression in every single thing you do. And so I knew getting out, like that was my focus, is like, how am I going to treat every day simple interactions with people, and how am I going to do it in a really great way? Like my and I'm sorry for a little bit of a rant here, but
No, no, no. You're fine. You're fine.
I really believe that the most important thing we can do as individuals is never underestimate the impact you can have on people's lives with simple actions, right? With simple kindness. The amount of impact you can make in someone's life with 5 minutes of conversation, with 5 minutes of care, with 5 minutes of love is unbelievable. And it's things we wouldn't even give a second thought about, right? And so, and you getting out and getting into the world of entrepreneurship and building my own brand, I was like, I need to carry over those lessons, and I need to be extremely kind, extremely attentive, extremely respectful, and do all of those things in a way that showed people that I genuinely care about them and I want to help them. Right. And so that was the transition for me. Um, and something that again, that I was really focused on is in making that transition out of the service.
When you were talking, it reminded me of something I heard, and I don't remember who said it, but it's like, you know, people remember how you make them feel. They
Mm-hmm.
may not remember what you said, but they remember generally how you make them feel. And that's something that, I also try to do. And maybe it's I don't know if it's the Southern upbringing in me or not, but, I try to make, be nice to everybody,
Yeah.
and try to, leave something with them. And, you talked about why you picked real estate, but what do you get out of real estate?
Mm. Yeah, for me, the reason I picked real estate is I felt like it fit really well with my priorities of why I was getting out of the service. This is something, again, for all my athletes, this is going to be a direct conversation to you,
Right.
right? When I was getting out of the service and making the decision to get out of the service, I did a reflective exercise, right? And I wanted to prove to myself that getting out of the service was the right decision for me. But in order to do that, I needed to actually reflect on what was most important in my life, right? So
Mhm.
I brought out a big whiteboard, and Sandy, I can share this picture with you, but like,
I love that. I love that. I have one over here.
gotta have it, right? And so I brought out a big whiteboard, and I brought out like the things that were most important to me in my life, right? And the first one was being able to spend more time with my family and friends, right?
Yeah.
People is the most important thing in the world to me. I love people. I'm a people person. I believe that real estate and everything that I do is in the people business. And
Right.
so for me, I was very invested in choosing a career that allowed me to be around my family and friends at a much higher frequency than I was in the military.
Mhm.
The second thing that I wanted was not have to move every couple of years. Right. And so I was like, I wanted to be able to establish roots in a place and be able to kind of like build my life in this new
Yes.
location.
Yes.
Right. And so I thought that was also really important. My third thing that I thought was, really interesting was I wanted to make way more money.
Well,
And
sure.
again, and especially with a caveat is like, again, I think the reality of the world is like the people who have a lot of capital are able to, yeah, again, it's up to you at that point to do it, but
Right.
have the real ability to make real positive change, like really
Yes.
affect things. So like for me, it was like, I want a career path where I can build a business that gives me an opportunity to have the capital to really make a positive impact on communities that I really care about. Right. And
Right.
so, uh, that was something that was extremely important to me as well. And I'm actually going to pull up the photo of this whiteboard because I want to make sure I'm reading everything that's correct here. The fourth thing that was really important to me was the freedom and flexibility to prioritize the things that bring me a lot of joy in life. Right. And so we talked about like how a sport, like it brought me my passion. Like I freaking love basketball. like I don't think like I love the silly game of basketball. Like to me, there's nothing better in the whole world. Like I love it. I'm a basketball junkie. And so, you know, being in the real estate world gave me an opportunity as well as I'm sure we'll cover, and you
Right.
brought it up early, to officiate basketball, right?
Right.
Like being self-employed and being a real estate agent worked really well and hand in hand with like pursuing the officiating career as well. And so again, it kind of all fit in this priority list of like being able to pursue hobbies that I really enjoy was really important to me.
Mm.
And then the third thing was the prioritization of my physical and mental health, right? Like I wanted a
Okay.
career. Being on submarines, it's a grind. It's really
Yes.
difficult. There's not a lot of space to exercise. You're not doing all these things. And again, like I really wanted a career where I could prioritize my physical and my mental health. And so when
Right.
I looked at all of those things, more times with family and friend, flexibility to pursue hobbies and things that I enjoy, the prioritization of my physical and mental health, making more money to be able to positively impact communities I really care about, and then building roots in a new place and not having to move every 2 to 3 years, I was like, that makes sense. Like all of those
Right.
things make sense. And I was like, if those things are most important to me, then we go back to this idea of integrity. I need to make sure I'm constantly aligning my actions to the reasons I got out of the military. Because if I'm not doing that, then like I shouldn't have got out in the first place because I'm not
Right.
doing what I said I was going to do. Right. And
Right.
so this is my challenge to all athletes is like, take a look and be really reflective about what is most important to you in your life, what things really matter to you, and then start to align your career choices with those things. And your main career choice may not be what is those items, but it may give you the opportunity. It opens the doors to pursue those things. Right. And so
Exactly.
this is where, just being really thoughtful and being really reflective and being honest with yourself of what is really important to you. And then doing things that help you achieve those things is going to be really important in your transition out of your sport. Right. Just like it was for me, for my
Right.
transition out of the service. And so
Right.
that's kind of the overarching theme that I would say is, again, it's all about being really thoughtful, really reflective, being honest with yourself and like labeling those things about what's really important to you and then pursuing those things.
A lot of that speaks to your education and your structure, both in high school and in college at the
Mhm.
academy. Um, I look at the conversations I've had with other athletes who did not have that structure because the academy gives you a great deal of structure,
Yep.
right? And I think for the stories that I've heard, that thought process is kind of hard to think about.
Mm.
I
Mm.
think for the ones that I've talked to, it's more of the feeling or they don't necessarily know what to do next.
Yep.
Um, I do want to ask a question. Were you married when you got out of the service or before you got out of the service?
No, I
Okay,
was.
so you got married after you got out of the service? Okay.
Mhm.
Cuz but obviously you two were together before you got out of the service.
We were getting together as I was getting out of the service. So I've been out of the service for about a year and a half now, right?
Okay.
So,
Okay.
well, yeah, I guess September is what, month 9? So yeah, close to 2 years. We started dating at the end of 2022. So we've been together, and I've only been married for a couple weeks now. So this is
Oh
this is
my
really
god.
this is really recent. Yeah, this is really recent.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
But
Yeah.
my question was, and I've asked some other athletes. The reason I was being so nosy is, um, what was the transition for her?
Mm.
Because obviously she knew you, kind of. I don't know if there was well, she knew you as you were getting out, but was there a transition for her at all?
A little bit in
A
me
little
kind
bit,
of in this process, but
right?
what's also awesome is that my wife, and I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, I'm sorry, but she's a
Sh-
badass. Like
Sure,
she's
you
awesome.
can. It's my
Yeah.
show. You can say whatever you want.
She's a badass. She's awesome. So she also went to the Naval Academy, and she currently is a Navy helicopter pilot. So she's still flying down in San Diego. So I'm living in San
Right,
Diego as a result of her and following her
right,
around. And
right.
so the transition was a little less because we're still in the military lifestyle
Well,
overall. Just
sure.
me now as a spouse.
Right,
So,
right. So
uh,
it's because like some of the guys that I talked to that were married, especially if they lost a career because of, injury or something like that, their
Mhm.
wives had a really difficult time because they went through a lot of depression and everything like that. And their
Yeah.
wives were like taking care of everything. But if your wife's a helicopter pilot, oh my God, she is a badass. So, okay.
Yeah,
Um,
she is. She was ready to go. She was locked in. She's like, "Hey, you better figure it out because I'm locked in over here." Yeah. No.
okay. Okay. What's her name? Can we give her a shout out? What's her
Yeah,
name?
Dominique Adams. Well, now Dominique Vermeer, which is very
Okay,
cool. Uh,
so I mean, I already like her. We have the same last name, so
that's
I
right.
mean, why not? Okay. Um anyway, so let's kind of backtrack a little bit. Let's
Mhm.
go back. We talked about high school.
Yeah.
What was your recruitment like? Was
Mm.
the Navy on your radar?
No, not really. This is actually a really funny story.
Okay, great.
So
I love funny stories.
when I was going through my recruitment process, it was freshman year in high school. My dad sits me down and he's like, "Do you want to play college basketball?" Right? Because again, here's the reality of my life. I'm a 6'2" white guy. All right. It's not like Duke. It's not like Duke in North Carolina were knocking on my door. All right. I
I
I
love that. I
I
love
had to
that.
be I had to be very proactive in my recruitment. Right. Like I'm
Sure.
not a generational talent. I'm not even an elite talent. I was just a kid who was pretty good at basketball. Right. And
Okay,
so for me, I was really on that like D3, D1 border, right? I was an
right.
Ivy League, Patriot League guy or D3, right? And so I knew that like I wanted to be in that realm. Like that was something
Oh,
that was important to me.
so
Yeah.
wait a minute. What you said Ivy League.
Yeah.
So why Ivy League?
For me, again, so I love this. If there's any kids out there, right? Like this is my thing about sports. And I guess this goes for current athletes too, actually,
Sure.
is I am a firm believer. Like, and I believe this since day one, and this is because of my dad, and I'm so grateful for his influence in my life, right?
Right.
My biggest advice to athletes is to not let your sport use you, but to use your sport to get where you want to
Yes.
get in life.
Yes.
Use your sport to open up doors to achieve what you want to achieve in life, right?
Right.
And so for me, I knew that I wanted to use basketball to get into an incredible university, right? And so
Okay.
this is why kind of again, Ivy League, Patriot League, like I knew one, I sure as heck wasn't good enough to get into like play in some of the higher mid-major conferences. Um, but I also knew that I wanted to attend a university that was again prestigious, right? Like that was
Right.
something that was I wanted an elite education. And so, and again, I was I was smart. I'm not smart enough to get into Harvard on my own, right? Like that
I love
with
that.
without basketball, right? So
Right.
for me it was like, all right, how am I going to use the game of basketball to get where I want to go in life, to get into a school I otherwise wouldn't be able to get into,
Sure.
right? And so we're genning up like schools that I'm going to send a note to, right? I'm going to send an email to the recruiting
And you're a
coordinator.
freshman in high school.
I'm a freshman in high school. I'm a
I
freshman in
love
high school.
this. I love this. I love
So
this.
so I'm sending out, well, this was like after the end of my freshman year where like I had a really
But
again like a
still.
good season and I'm at this point, right? And I
Right.
appreciate it. Yeah. So I'm proactive. I'm sending stuff to again to all like the major D3 like conferences, like the
Right.
NESCAC and all that stuff. I'm sending to letters to the coaches of MIT, of Swarthmore, of Amherst, of like all these high academic, really good Division 3 programs. And I'm also sending it to Lafayette, Lehigh, right?
Right.
Bucknell, Harvard, Yale, etc. Like I'm sending all these things. My
Okay. What
dad,
I
Oh
do
yeah,
want to
please.
ask one question.
Mhm.
What did you want to study?
At that point, I wasn't 100% sure. My brother was, so again, for context, I grew up in the Silicon Valley, right? Like, I think it's really funny. People talk about their
Ah,
different experiences. I'm driving to high school every day as a 15-year-old, pulling up at red lights, looking next to me. There's nobody in the car next to me. It's a Google self-driving car, like getting miles for their data projects, right? Like
okay, that's crazy.
that's my reality. Like pulling up to
Okay,
red lights next to self-driving cars was like my upbringing, right? And
sure.
so I was very involved in the STEM world, like the tech world
Right.
and
Right.
innovation. And
Okay.
so
Okay.
I wanted something very technical based, whether it be computer science, engineering, something of the
Right.
sort. Like I knew I wanted to be in that field.
Right.
So as we're writing all these letters, my dad is just like, do you want to send a letter to the Naval Academy or to Army or to Air Force, et cetera,
Right.
to any of the service academies? And I literally told him point blank, I was like, no. I was like, I was like, I want to be a normal kid, right? Like, I want to go have a normal college experience. I want to do all these things. Like, no way. I don't
Right.
want to be in the
Right.
military. Like, yeah, cool idea, but like, I'd rather just go to a normal school and play basketball.
Did you know anybody in the military?
None.
Okay.
None.
Okay.
So again, a
Okay.
big piece of it, right? Like no
Sure.
exposure to it,
That's
no
right.
awareness. Like I don't realize just how incredible these universities are, right? Like I'm just like, no, we're good. And so I don't. I send letters to all these different places, and it leads to a good recruitment for me, right? Like
Right.
I ended up in a spot where I was getting interest from Division I schools, but really no offers. But like I joked, I became like the LeBron James of D3, right? Like my recruiting was like awesome, right? Like I'm having like all these top D3 programs, write me letters, recruit me really heavily. I'm
Right.
getting brought out for like the junior days at Swarthmore, at MIT, at
Wow.
Claremont McKenna down in
Right.
LA, out to Whitman College in Walla Walla, Washington, who had won the national championship. Like it was super fun. Like I was like, wow, this is really incredible. And I thought that was really awesome. And so I was like, I was convinced. I was like, all right, well, I'm just gonna play D3. Like I'm gonna play D3 and it'll be like this is great. It's gonna get
Right.
me into one of these elite schools. And I ended up actually at the end of my junior day in high school, I committed to MIT. I was like, I want to go to the Massachusetts Institute of
Pretty
Technology.
impressive.
I'm going to go to MIT and thank you. I appreciate it. Again, it's one of the things I didn't have the grades to get in on my own, but with basketball, it was going to open up a door to
I
attend a
think
university
that's
that's super
really
great.
important to put that there. You didn't have the grades alone,
Yep.
but basketball with your grades gave you the opportunity.
Correct.
I think that's an
100%.
awesome, awesome caveat there. Yeah.
100%. And so, so I was like, I was set. I was like, I told the coach, I committed. I was like, I'm coming to MIT, right? And
Right.
handshake, awesome, love it, sweet. Now, again, the reality of Division III basketball is that there's no athletic scholarships.
Right.
And with MIT, the coach could give me the wink, wink, nod, nod, like we're gonna get you in, but there's like no guarantee that I'm gonna get into the school, right? So I have to keep options open still for my
Yeah.
own
Right.
safety, right?
Right.
And so I go into junior summer, going into my senior year, and I get a little bit like I hit puberty, right? Like I start to develop a little bit, I grow, I fill out a little bit,
Right.
and I have a really good summer. And I end up getting an offer from Sacramento State. And then in my last Division I game, or excuse me, last Division I game, my last like high school AAU summer game,
Right.
who's sitting in the stands, unbeknownst to me, besides one of the assistant coaches from Navy, right? And so
In
I
California.
Las Vegas. It was a Las Vegas like summer tournament, like major AAU
Oh,
tournament. So
okay.
all the coaches were just coming.
Because you were playing AAU
He was
ball.
playing AAU
Okay.
exactly.
Okay.
And so yeah, so like Navy coach is there. And as fate would have it, I have like the best game of my life, right? Like best game of my life. And so before you know it, like as soon as the live period opens up, I get a phone call from Navy, right? Navy coach calls, hey, Grant, blah, blah, blah. One of our assistant coaches is going to be out in California. Is it okay if they swing by your high school and meet with you? I was like, holy smokes. Like I've gone
Wow.
2-year periods, like getting led on by Division I programs. Like, oh
Right.
yeah. No, like we're interested, but like we're interested only if the guy we actually want commits somewhere else.
Sure.
Right. And so
Right.
to like have this like immediate, like real interest, I was like, oh, that's cool. Assistant coach comes out. He's like, he watches me practice. He's like, no, like we're interested. Head coach flies out the week after, and I get an offer. Right. So I go this period of like 2 years of like being led on by a bunch of Division
Right.
I programs. And then within 2 weeks, I get an offer from the Naval Academy, and they're like, we want you to come on your official visit. Like, we want you to come play basketball at the Naval Academy. Right. And I was like,
Did they say what about you interested them for their program?
Yeah, they did the classic thing. Obviously, I was a good student, so like that was
Sure.
positive. They're like, hey, you're a good student. You're gonna fit in really well at the school, right? Like we believe you have the ability to come in and play and make an impact, like in our program and
Right.
do all these things, and we fit well. And again, the reality was as well, I was the first recruiting class for a new coach at Navy. So the year before, my
Oh,
senior year in high school, was the first year in general for Ed DeCellis. He had just come from Penn State. And so I was part of his first recruiting class, right? So I just had to
right.
take a chance. Like his thing
Right.
was like, hey, we're a new program. We're recruiting. This is our first recruiting class, and we want to bring people in who are, responsible, mature, and ready to come in and play, right?
Did
Ready
they
to come
not
in and
have
play.
did they not have basketball prior to you coming in?
No, they did. It was just
Okay.
different
Okay.
coach, right? It was
Just
different
different
coach,
coach. Okay.
and again, when that coach left, some people transferred before, and other people just didn't play or whatever
Right.
the case was. So yeah, it was just one of those things, and so I was like, all right, well, like I'm already committed to MIT, but like couldn't hurt to go on an official visit, right? Like couldn't hurt,
Right.
and so I went on the visit, and if you've never been to Annapolis, Maryland
Oh, I
before,
have. I
oh
have.
my gosh,
It's gorgeous.
and the
It is
pomp
gorgeous.
and the pomp and circumstance of the Naval Academy and the show that they can put on, like you go and you go there and you just feel something special, right? Like
I
when we
felt
talk,
something just like walking across the yard, like just standing.
yep,
It's a really incredible place.
it's a really incredible place. So like then I was like, all right, well, now I have the opportunity to play Division I basketball. It is an elite institution
Yes.
and it's going to be completely free, right? And again, we're in a situation, our family, we made too much money to qualify for financial aid, but
Yeah.
certainly not enough money to pay for a $250,000 like college bill, right?
Right.
And so
Right.
um so again, there's a certain aspect of like this is great for the family, this is great for me, and I realized probably not fully as a 17-year-old, but I'm so
Yeah.
glad I did. Now upon reflection, is like the Naval Academy is unbelievable. Like when we talk about going to college not being a 4-year decision, it is a 40-year decision, and choosing the Naval Academy unlocks 40 years of camaraderie,
Mhm.
of success, of purpose in your life. Like it's incredible, right? And so just super grateful that it worked out that way.
You know, in Kim's interview, we talked a lot about how he tried to prepare
Hmm.
for his first year,
Yep.
but he was unprepared.
Hmm.
Like there's no way. Like, so what was your first day like? What was the shock
it
when
it
your
was
parents dropped you off?
it was a shock, all right. So I run a nonprofit now. It's called Academy Insider,
Mhm.
and the reason I started it was because of the story that I'm about to tell you right now.
Okay.
So when I showed up to the Naval Academy, I was excited. I knew that I was going to a military school, but I didn't like fully realize what that really meant, right? And what that really entailed. And so I show up and I'm like, oh, this is crazy. Like this is a lot going on. But then my first detailer, we use this term detailer. It's an upper
Right.
class midshipman who's a part of the plebe summer detail, meaning like they're one of the midshipmen who's responsible for training the plebes, the freshmen at the Naval
Right.
Academy
Right.
during that plebe summer. And so this first detailer is like the sweetest girl of all time. She's like, oh, come on this way. Like, you be fine. Come, like, yeah, bring your bag up here. We're going here. And I'm like, oh, what's everyone talking about? Like
Yeah, this is easy.
this is totally fine. I was like, this is totally fine. So I'm like, I drop my bags off. I'm doing this. I'm like folding my clothes. They're like teaching you how to fold stuff. And then I have to go to the bathroom. So I'm like, all right, well, I'm just gonna go use the restroom. So I like walk out into the hallway. And as soon as I walk out in the hallway, like another detailer sees me and he's like, what the heck are you doing? And he's like, he just starts screaming at me. He's yelling. He's telling me to hit a bulkhead. I have no idea what that means. I'm staring. I'm standing, like staring at him. I have no idea what's going on. And he's going in on me. He's like, you undisciplined, blah, blah, blah. How could you be doing this? Like, what are you doing? You don't know what's going on. Hit a bulkhead. Like mass
Oh my
confusion,
God.
right? Mass confusion. And so now I'm like standing there. I'm like, what did I just do?
That's right.
What? Oh, what did I just do? And it certainly didn't get any better, because what's funny about the Naval Academy is your first couple of weeks during that plebe summer, that military
Mhm.
indoctrination period, you're not playing your sport. There's no sports
Right.
practice for the first couple weeks. So I'm like,
Right.
what did I just get myself into? And so I literally wrote a letter home to my mom. A lot of times I would write letters. Again, we don't have our phones. There's no communication with
That's
family
right.
besides quite literally handwritten letters. I write a letter home to my mom. And normally I would address letters to like the Vermeer family. Oh, dear family, to mom and dad, to blah, blah, blah. Like, this one
Right.
was just to mom. No one else. This is for mom. And it just said, in all caps, on the beautiful Naval Academy stationery, the big like logo on the top of the paper, that says, I hate this place. I just want to be happy. Please save me, mom.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I hated every bit of it. I hated every bit of it. And so it was a massive shock to me. And again, it would be hours if we told the full story. But again, this is why I believe the power, like, to never underestimate the power of simple actions, because it was quick conversations from people who probably thought it was a routine thing in their day to day that like
Right.
kept me at the Naval Academy. That like my leadership having a simple conversation with me and helping calm me down and take me out of my emotional state and bring me to a baseline of logic is the difference between me leaving the Naval Academy and staying at
Right.
the Naval
Well,
Academy.
and they have to understand most people that
Mhm.
start the Naval Academy are going to experience the same thing that you were feeling. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
it's
It's
got to be.
designed.
I do have a quick question. Did your mom ever tell you like her immediate response when when she read that letter?
She was ready to get on a flight and drag my butt out of there, man.
Mama's
She
coming to save you.
Mama's coming to see. Yes, she said, "That looks like a request to me." I'm like, "I'm going, right? I'm going." And we talk about it a lot. Again, it's a funny thing, but my mom always tells me, she's like, a parent can only be as happy as their
Sure.
unhappiest child,
Sure.
right? And
Sure.
so she was going through it. I put her through it, right? She was going
And
through the
she's
ringer too.
across the country.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
And
So
like you've committed to the Naval Academy. It's not like, I mean, I guess, could she just show up and take you back?
no, I would have to initiate it, right? Like
Yeah. Oh, okay.
you can leave, like you can drop on like drop, we call it DOR, drop on request. Like you can
Yeah.
leave. But yeah, no, if my mom showed up, they'd be like, ma'am, thanks for coming. Like you need to leave. Yeah, you need to leave. So yeah, I mean, it was again, it was one of those things, but it was my first real lesson in resilience. It was my first real
Right.
lesson in overcoming adversity, right? And I think that is like just tremendously important. Why I'm so grateful to the academy.
So before we get into the basketball aspect, I do because you just touched on that. Let's quickly just talk about um I believe that you started this nonprofit we talked about,
Yeah.
which was Naval Insider,
Hmm.
and you started it right after you got commissioned as an officer. Is that
Correct.
correct?
Hmm.
Okay, so can we just quickly talk about that and kind of what your objective was in order to start that?
Yep. Long story short, as you heard, hated the academy.
did
Hated the
your
academy.
did your mom keep that letter?
Oh yeah, we still have it to this day. Thank goodness. Thank goodness, because it makes great content now.
Sure it does. Sure it does.
um, but no, hated it at first. Because of the education of the Naval Academy and the investment of mentors in my life, I started to get it, right? I started
Right.
to get it. I understood it. And by the time I was at the end of my Naval Academy experience, I was like, I loved it. I was bought in. I believed in
Right.
it. And I understood the purpose of everything that I went through in that difficult period. And so I knew, in a conversation with my dad, though, I brought up, I was like, I wish I would have done a better job communicating to you guys about what I was going through at the Naval Academy, because I felt like I put them in a bad spot of how to actually support me because they didn't
Sure.
understand what was going on in my life. Even in this episode, I've had to stop and pause and explain a couple of acronyms just to make the stories make
Right.
sense. Our whole life is that way. The Naval Academy is so unique. There's so many
Right.
intricacies, so much slang and jargon that's so specific to the Naval Academy that like trying to understand what your son or daughter is going through is a nightmare, right? And so I was like, all right, how am I going to take my experience and help make it better for the next wave of midshipmen that are
Sure.
coming through, right? And so it started off as just a blog, right? Like I
Right.
was writing blogs, giving my advice. I did a couple of Facebook Live videos to help answer some of the questions about what plebe summer is, some of the
Right.
terminology for the parents whose kids were currently going through the experience. And so I knew like that was it. And for me, I say I started it in 2017. It wasn't like a nonprofit at that point. It was
Right.
just a passion project, something I was
Right.
doing to give back. And then when I got out of the service, I was like, all right, I want to turn this into a real entity and provide the best service that I can give. And
Hmm.
so I got it incorporated. It's officially a 501c3. It's approved. It's a tax exempt organization. We accept donations to everything. And our mission is quite literally to support the Naval Academy community. And so Academy Insider at its core is all about guiding and serving midshipmen, future midshipmen, and their families. And we
Right.
do that primarily through education. But we're getting ready coming into 2025 to really expand our umbrella into charitable giving and hopefully really give an opportunity for disadvantaged midshipmen families who may not have the
Sure.
financial means to, again, come out to Annapolis to, again, these are all unique Naval Academy things, but we have I Day, right? The induction day, your first day at the
Right.
Naval Academy. It's a really special moment in people's lives, but a lot of people can't afford to be there, to fly to
Right.
Annapolis, to be a part of that event. And I think that's really important for the family dynamic for that to happen. Um, we have this thing called Plebe Parents Weekend at the end of Plebe Summer where parents can come and visit their son or
Right.
daughter and see the transformation that's happened. But again, now we're talking about multiple flights to Annapolis, Maryland. We're talking about multiple nights of hotels. That's not feasible for a lot of families, but I
Right.
think really important in the family dynamic of everything. Our graduation is not a day, it's a week. We call
That's
it
right.
commissioning week,
Right.
right? And so, and high demand, high prices, high costs, like it becomes a real financial burden to a lot of families. And so, really, our next venture and goal is really to do some charitable giving to midshipmen families to hopefully ease the burden of those costs to
Sure.
be with their
Right.
loved one as they go through
Right.
the experience. And so, it's called Academy Insider. You can find it www.academyinsider.com. I'm on every like social media platform, and yeah, again, it's just it's really an opportunity for me to give back and realize that the Naval Academy was the greatest thing to ever happen to me, even though I would have never believed you if you had asked me that as a freshman. And I just really want to give back to the next wave of midshipmen and make it an experience that is really beneficial for the families as well, in really bridging that knowledge gap and helping making it easier for them to support their child or their loved one going through it.
I'll put all of the links that he's going to give us in the show notes, so you guys out there don't have to necessarily worry about writing stuff down really quickly. I do want to just kind of backtrack a little bit because
Yep.
you talked about buying into the culture and all of that.
Mhm.
Let's look at current schools, D1, D2, D3.
Mhm.
I'm really going to focus on D1 because it's all
Yep.
in the news.
Yep.
You look at a lot of these schools where there is the turnover, there is the transfer portal now,
Mhm.
there is NIL,
Mhm.
and I just see that so many schools get basically a new team every year, almost,
Mhm.
and there doesn't seem to be as much bought in
Mhm.
team aspect wise for a lot
Yep.
of schools, a lot of
Mhm.
teams. What do you see as a possible? I mean, I know you can't fix every school, but I mean, what are your thoughts on how to build that team dynamic? Because you've gone through a place where culture was everything.
Mhm.
It's had to be everything. You've been on
Yep.
a submarine where it's got to be team oriented, right? So, what are some thoughts on how these teams can build that culture better?
Yeah. The onus is on every party involved, right? And I
Mhm.
think, I always think it's funny, just like general media, people love to put scapegoats, put people as the
Yeah,
primary
yeah.
responsibility for certain things. It's on all of us, right? It's been the culture that's been
Mhm.
created by players, the parents of players who are
Right,
pushing their sons or daughters in different ways, and on the coaches and the administrations and everything of the sort. My personal opinion is that you need coaches to start, right? Who are going to genuinely care about and love their players and
right.
not see them as a means to an end to win games and get paid, right? And so that's the start of it. But it also comes down to players owning that, right? It's what I talked about earlier, which is that like we and again, the 1% of us who are going to go to the NBA and make millions and millions of dollars, then yes,
Mhm.
your best ROI, your best return on investment is going to the program where you're going to get the best shot to get seen and go play in the NBA.
Right.
Straight up. You're going to make way more money doing that than anything else in the world. For the 99.9% of us who are going to play our college sport and then go on and, like you're saying, live life, live normal
Right.
life, you need to pick the school that is going to set you up best for life. For
Right.
life, right? And that comes down to, are the coaches actually going to invest in me in my personal and professional development? Are they going to love me? Are they going to care about me? Are they going to teach me, coach me, and mentor me and help me set my life up for success? Are they going to open up doors for me? Are they going to connect me with people outside of this? What network am I becoming a part of that, like, I'm going to be set up for success when I leave this institution, right? If we transition that, and again, it's made it tougher because NIL, you get money now, but you're
Right.
not going to make nearly enough money to set you up for life. And this is where my biggest push comes in, which is like, you need to pick a school, you need to pick a program that is going to set you up for life.
Right.
And but it comes down to delaying gratification, right? Like, we want to get paid now. We want to do these things now. We want to become a part of a winning culture now. Like,
Right.
no, you have to build it brick by brick, day by day, habitual action by habitual action. And you need to put yourself in an ecosystem and a part of a team that's going to care about you, that is going to love you, and they're going to teach you, coach you, and mentor you and help you develop and become the person you need to be successful in life. Right? Because I guarantee
Mhm.
you now, if you're a mid-major D1 athlete going to play at, and I don't want to use another school to disparage them at all, but like,
Right.
you have the
Right.
opportunity to go play at West Point or the Naval Academy or the Air Force Academy, or make $40,000 playing for X school in an NIL deal. I guarantee you the holistic experience and education of being being a student athlete at the Naval Academy, the life experiences you're going to get as a military officer, and then the network you're going to become a part of as a result of being a
Right.
graduate of those institutions, the ROI on that in the long term is going to be significantly higher than anything else in the world. Right. And
Hmm.
so that's my call to action to athletes, is like, take a long-term approach. What is going to set me up best for life? What is going to set me up for success? And use your sport to get you to that place, to open up the doors
Right.
that make you arrive there, and not be worried about this like immediate term, right? As the world wants instant gratification more and
They
more,
do. They
the
really do.
the reward for delaying your gratification is becoming more and more, right? And so, like, if you can accept that and really invest in your development as a young man or woman and like grow and develop, like, you're going to set yourself apart in so many ways.
The instant gratification is really hard to deal with. And I see this not only with college players, but also with high school players.
Hmm.
I do love the fact that you talked about how you were on an AAU team and that's how you got exposed to Navy by going and doing travel ball. I really think that is a great opportunity there. And just using, I think looking for opportunities wherever they are, keeping your eyes open for opportunities and not be so blinded to, I want to play in the NBA or I want to play in the NFL or I want to do this. Open yourself up to whatever else is out there. Let's do really quickly. I do want to talk about your Navy career playing basketball.
Yeah.
Okay, so what was that like the first day, the first game where you put on that uniform and you played for Navy?
Dream come true. As a kid growing up, like, shooting hoops and in the front yard, right? Like, to be able to put on a college jersey and play was incredible. So much fun. I got it. Like, I played, my freshman year, like, getting into it. Played a little bit starting
Right.
off, right? Had a great game actually against the University of Virginia, at the
Right.
University of Virginia. So much fun, right? Like, dream come true. Start to play way more, right? Like, get this opportunity, and like, incredible, right? Incredible opportunities. Another cool thing about like the United States Naval Academy, people want to come play you. It's good PR for them,
It
right? And
is
so, like,
good PR.
my sophomore year, I'm a starter. First game of the year, Michigan State playing at the Naval Academy in Annapolis for the Veterans Classic. Like, I'm lined up against Denzel Valentine, who had a good NBA career playing overseas still, right? Like, I played against NBA players as a result
Right.
of my time at the Naval Academy. So much fun. Like dream come true, playing Division 1 basketball. It was also the best teacher about life for me
Mhm.
because the reality of the Naval Academy, well, is it's a Division 1 program and their
Mhm.
job is to win. And so, sophomore year, I get hurt. Well, I actually get sick first. I get like the flu over Christmas break and I miss about 2 weeks of the season. And then it takes me another good 2 weeks just to get my
Sure.
conditioning back and feel good. So I'm out for about a month. And during that time, a freshman came in, got the opportunity to play and capitalized on it. And then, as it
Wow.
turns out, just a better player than me, just straight up like a better basketball player. And so he ended up going on and playing. In my junior and senior years at the academy, I didn't play much, right? And so,
Right.
what a good life opportunity. Again, originally off the bat, yeah, I pouted. I was like, "This is ridiculous. This is unfair. Like, I don't like this." And I had, again, when I talked about the Naval Academy, I had mentors who sat me down and talked to me, and they're like, "Hey, this is the situation. It is what it is. You
Right.
have two choices. You can either choose to pout or you can choose to embrace your new role and do whatever it takes to help the team win. You
Mhm.
control your attitude, you control your effort. That's it. And if you want to choose to pout and be a loser, that's on you. Or you can do what it takes to help the team win. Right. And so for me, that was the first mindset shift of like going and being a great teammate. And like this
Right.
is the Naval Academy to a T through and through. Right. And again, to be a great teammate, you have to know your role, you have to embrace your role, and you have to excel in your role. Even if you hate your role, my role early on was to play, was to
Right.
contribute. My role later on in my time at the Naval Academy was not that. My role was to be a great practice player and to like bring positivity and do all the additional little things to help the team win. Did I like that role? No, I hated that role. I'm a competitive person. I want to play, right? But like
Right.
that's not my choice, right? Like it is what it is. And so now I have the option to do it. And so again, I realized what my role was because a lot of people are delusional. They're like, that's not
A
my
lot.
role.
A lot
Like,
of delusional.
yeah, no, but it is your role. Like
Right.
it's been decided by the coaches. That's your role, right? So again, now you're at a point where you have to know your role. You have to now embrace your role as hard as it is, and then excel in your role. Right. And so for me, then it was like, all right, how am I going to be a great practice player? How am I going to be involved in scouting and film study and do my best to replicate what the other teams are actually doing to give our starters the best look before we go into the game? How am I going to be always positive, cheering, bringing energy, being attuned to how the starters are feeling? How am I going to like talk to them, motivate them, help them, guide them, whatever it is, and do it because that's what I can do to help the team win, right? And so like what are we doing as a unit, as an individual to get outside of ourselves, to get out of our mind and our own selfish personal desires and embrace what our role is to help the team win and help other people, right? And so
Mhm.
for me that was a great life lesson and development in the process in this whole thing, and I'm so grateful for my basketball experience as well because when we talk about it, basketball taught me so much about what I needed to know for life, right? To
Sure.
set me up for
Sure.
life. And so so grateful for the whole
I'm
experience.
gonna use your quote that you had in there. You know, obviously Memphis is I like to call it the Mecca of
Yeah.
basketball. Um, but I also, I do see how this younger generations, they just want to shoot. And especially high school kids, they just want to shoot. They think that's the star role, and no matter, they have that chip on their shoulder that they know everything, and
Yep.
some of them feel a little entitled,
Sure.
you know. And I think, what you just said sums up. And I'm not sure if every high school student is mature enough to realize that. They don't want to
Sure.
give up that dream because I think every all of them want to play in the NBA or they want to play in the NFL.
Sure.
But it is something that, you know, in order to be a good teammate, you do need to know your role, and not everybody can shoot. And I want to say it was maybe, I don't know, LeBron James or somebody else who kind of numbered it down and said, if you score this many points in a game, that means the ball is in somebody's hand just this many times. What's everybody else doing when they're not shooting?
Yep.
And it comes down to, you can't win games on just shooting. You've got to
Yep.
have defense.
Yep.
You've got to have the people that pass the ball and everything else. I think that was great information there. Was it hard? I know that you went on and played. I want to say this. So
Yeah.
you won a silver medal in the 2019 Military World Games,
Yeah.
and that was after you left the academy.
Yeah.
Um, what was that like, the transition from the Naval Academy as a
Mm,
basketball player? And then obviously sports is a big part of just the military overseas and in various ports around the world and
yeah.
um, for recreation. But how did that help you after you got out of the academy and you were a naval officer? How did the sport help you then?
Yeah. I mean, so much. And I think what's really cool, you mentioned that, is there's a team called the USA Armed Forces basketball team, where for a month out of every year, you can try out to play for that team and go compete internationally.
See,
Right.
that's so cool. That's so
Which
cool.
which was so cool. So my playing career wasn't even officially done. Like a month out of each year, I got to go play for the USA Armed Forces basketball team. 2019 Military World Games in Wuhan, China.
Which
Competed.
can I just say, I had never heard of that city
Well, now it's
until and
infamous.
until the pandemic. I had never heard of that city. I'm like, what the hell? How does everybody know who
Yeah.
Wuhan, China is?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's now my icebreaker in any group, which is that like likely I was the number one in every athlete, like the USA delegation of athletes was like the number one super spreader of COVID in the world, likely. You know, when we left that trip, we
You
spent
are
2.5
joking though.
weeks. Yeah, I'm not. We were 2.5 weeks in Wuhan in between October and November of 2019, right? And at the end of the trip, everyone, not everyone, but like half the delegation of athletes was sick, right? But we just assumed everyone was just competing at an extremely hard, like high level. We had just, basically done international travel all over the world, like all these
Sure.
different things. But like people were sick, and again, everyone just assumed we were just exhausted, right? And at that point, COVID wasn't
Wow.
a thing. We didn't know
Right.
anything,
Mm-mm.
and there's no way to confirm that we actually had COVID and brought
Right.
it back. But like we were in the epicenter of COVID. We were in Wuhan for 2.5 weeks, and there were athletes from every country in the entire world who were in that place, and then flew home to their respective
Oh
countries
my God.
like immediately after, right? And so it's like wild. So that's like my fun fact is like there's a chance that like me and my friends are like the number one super spreaders of COVID before anything in the world. Like,
I mean, it's
you
not
know,
funny, but
um, and so yeah, I mean, wild experience. But to answer your question, I'm sorry for the tangent. Is that
that's okay.
I there are a couple things that I'm most grateful for about being a college athlete and how it prepared me for my job as a naval officer and it prepared me in life. And the first one is that it got me really good at handling hard conversations. Right.
Mm,
And so I think this is really important in life, right? Especially if you're in a management and a leadership situation. You need to have the humility to be able to be a champion at receiving critical feedback, which means be on the receiving end of hard conversations, right?
right.
And be able to receive that information from coaches, from teammates, from peers, whatever it is, if you are doing something wrong, right?
Right.
You need to be able to have the humility to actually listen to what they're saying and not immediately get defensive, right? And
Right.
so basketball taught me that, which was really important. It also taught me that I need to get really comfortable at having uncomfortable conversations on the giving end, right? If I'm
Mm,
seeing something and again, we're not setting screens appropriately, we're not running the play correctly, we're not doing these things. If I just let it slide, then I'm actively contributing to us not doing as well as we possibly could,
sure.
right? And so, out of a sake of accountability, you need to be able to speak up and have the courage to bring those things up and have those hard conversations. But those are really difficult conversations to have because if you
Hmm.
approach it in the wrong direction, if you have the wrong tone, if you do things wrong, like you're going to either personally affect that relationship with that person or that person's not going to be able to listen and receive it, right? Like being on the
Right.
giving end of those conversations is also really important because
Right.
what's most important is that you actually articulate and get the message across in a way that is received by the other person, right?
Hmm.
And so that is a really difficult situation and thing to balance. And guess what? As a leader in the military, as a guy who led a division of upwards of, or a department of close to 60 people, I had to have a lot of really difficult conversations with a lot of people, right? And
Yeah.
so, having that experience and practice of having really difficult conversations, of having the right setting, of having the right tone in my voice, of having the right messaging and content of what I'm actually saying, like that takes a lot of practice. Like that's a muscle that you have to train. And
Mhm.
so for me to be able to have that experience as a result of basketball was super awesome in my day job.
So now let's go to you're now a referee
Yeah.
for the NCAA.
Yeah.
Was that something that you had to wait until you got out of the service to do, or had you started doing that before the service?
I didn't have to wait. I did wait just because I didn't really know about the opportunity.
Oh,
It was actually the interjection of a mentor who was like, "Hey, you should consider officiating basketball." That got me into it.
right.
And that didn't happen until I was actively transitioning out of the military. So I started officiating about 2 years ago. I'll be going into my third season this coming year, and it was just awesome, right? Like this is going to be my plug to all the athletes who may be listening. If you're looking for a way to stay involved with the game, like officiating is an incredible way to do it. Again, I mentioned I'm a junkie. Like I love basketball. I needed a way to stay involved with the game. I don't have the time to be able to coach, to be able
Right.
to invest in that. So it was like, how am I going to stay involved in the game? And how am I going to serve the game? Right? How am I going to give back to a game that I love? And we need officials who played to come back and officiate these games, right? Like if
Yes.
we want the fairest, best games, people who understand the unspoken rules, the context, the gray area, like all these different aspects of the rules and the knowledge of the game, like we need officials to come back and serve the game. And it really is service because guess what? Being an official is hard. And like
It
they
is.
assumed like all these different things like about, oh yeah, I played, I'll be able to ref. Refing's hard,
It
right? And if we talk
is.
about having hard conversations, like if you the stuff that players and coaches say to you as an official is crazy. Is
Trust me.
crazy,
I,
right?
I've been
Yeah,
in FedEx form. Those refs get a really hard rap, let me
they
tell you.
get a really hard rap, and so, like, again, it's not fun. Like, it is fun because I love it, but, like, it's really difficult, and it's
Mhm.
really hard, and you're the subject of a lot of harassment, honestly, which is a whole nother topic that,
Sure.
like, for another day, but, like, you're the subject of a lot of difficulty, but if you want to give back to the game, if you wanna love the game, and you wanna help make the game as best as it can be, like, we need athletes to come back and officiate. And also
Right.
you can make pretty good money doing it. So if you want a side hustle, like stay involved, right? But like from the general thing and like my again when we talk about like living by purpose and like being of service, like for me this idea of being a man for others, being service first in everything that I do, like officiating is an incredible way to do that and give back to the game that I love dearly, right? And like
Mm.
contribute and try and make it as good as it can be. And so um if you want to stay involved with the game, you want to give back and contribute and say thank you for all the amazing years you had playing, like consider officiating. It's awesome.
Was it hard to get certified? Was it a
Uh,
long process?
no, no, like that. The barrier to entry is actually really low. You have to pass rules tests and you have to pass
Right.
mechanics tests about like how you should be moving, functioning, positioning as an official. But that's it, right? And then at that point, it's just performance based. It is purely a meritocracy. Like if you do a good job, like you will continue to advance. And so that's one of those really interesting things. My first year, I worked a lot of like JV and middle school games, right? Like to this day, the most brutal parents that I've ever experienced
They
were like
are.
a seventh grade B game girls at a random middle school in Austin, Texas. Like
They
brutal,
are.
dude.
They are.
Brutal.
Oh,
Um, and so you start off doing that. Do high school games. I worked low level college this past year. A lot of NAIA, JUCO,
right.
D3
Right.
stuff. I'll work a full Division II schedule this coming year, and then hopefully make my way into the Division I game in the next year or two. And and
I hope you don't come to FedEx Forum.
so, well, I promise you, any arena in the entire country, the same thing is happening.
I know, but I wouldn't be in there. Like one of our games, I want to say it was last year or the year before, really bad call at the end.
Yeah.
There was an issue about we didn't call a timeout, although we clearly called a timeout and the other
Mhm.
ref. And then I realized afterwards when they're talking about it on the television,
Yep.
the ref that made the call, I went to high school with him.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I was like, I hadn't seen him in like 25 years. I
Yeah.
don't know him.
Yeah.
But
It's
that's crazy.
tough.
Okay, so where can everybody find you online? I know we talked about the Naval Insider, but where can everybody find you online?
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn.
If you want to connect with me, go to LinkedIn.
Okay.
I take my LinkedIn profile
I
very
do
seriously,
too.
and
It
I
is
think
the jam.
it is. And so I'm just Grant Vermeer on
Okay.
LinkedIn. I post, everything that I do. So a lot of Naval Academy content, a lot of basketball officiating content,
Right.
and a lot of stuff about real estate as well. And so if you
Okay.
want to connect with me there, just touch base, talk about a service academy education, talk about anything, talk about life transitioning out of something, reach out to me there.
Okay.
Grant Vermeer on LinkedIn. Yeah,
And I'll put your websites and everything on the show notes as well.
perfect.
Grant, thank you so very much for being on today.
Of course, my pleasure. I'm sorry for going off and rambling
Oh
so
no
much.
no no! So I do
Episode.
have to tell you a funny joke.
Yeah.
It's not really a joke. So a lot of times I'm going really fast, and so yesterday I was making my notes, and for some reason I was writing down your name as Ben. I don't know why. I have no earthly idea
Yep.
why in the world. Although I think there was an actor that was Ben something. I don't know why I did that. And then this morning, I'm like pulling up your stuff and I'm like, oh my God, his name's not Ben, it's Grant. And then I like freak out. I'm like, did I write all of the notes to him? Did I put Ben in the notes? Surely he would have said that's not my name. So like I had this panic attack. So
Yeah.
that was kind of funny. So,
Oh, good.
if you
As
ever
a, as a
need,
as a podcast host myself, I get it. I've had those like wake up in the middle of the night. It's like, did I
yeah,
address it to the wrong person? Like, oh my
yeah.
God.
I
I've been
mean,
there.
and then I'm like, oh my God, like, yeah, it was just that panic attack of, and then I kind of jinxed myself. And then I was like afraid, oh my God, I'm going to like accidentally call him Ben in the middle of the show.
Uh,
So we're good. Anyway, thank you so much, so very much for being on today's show. That wraps it up. And for you all out there, thank you all for listening, especially if you've made it all the way to this part of the show. I hope that you found something interesting out of everything that Grant has shared with us today. I appreciate all your support. And remember to subscribe to the show wherever you listen or watch. My mantra is like, share, and review. Give us a review on Apple. Follow us on social media at 5THQRT Podcast. Until next time, remember, change is our ally and it paves a way for greatness. Stay inspired. Have a great rest of the week.